So, Lindsay, what was your inspiration for Night Fragments?
Well, a few things. It, I guess it was a commission for a start, so we were going to be doing a concert with Caitlin Cassidy, and we were kind of looking through the works, and there was no kind of like really large scale work for her, so that was definitely, I wanted to write for her voice, and it was a great opportunity from that point of view. The author, the poet that I used, Francelon Daniels, like I've always been really interested in her work, and it has quite a kind of freewheeling feel about it, which I was interested in. And I guess as well, if you remember, there was this kind of mania going around at that time amongst us, at least, for Fausto Romatelli. So I was listening to his song cycle Index of Metals a lot at that time, and I was kind of quite inspired by his combination of live instruments and electronics and video, which I think it will have at the launch, but not in the original version.
But it's not the first time you've written for voice, is it? You wrote an opera noir, as you called it, some time ago?
Yeah. Very long time ago. So 1995 was when the kind of all of the principal writing was pretty much completed, and so that wasn't actually put on until 2001, and by that time I'd actually written a couple more song cycles. Well, in fact, I think my original idea for this concert was that I kind of like remake an earlier song cycle from like 1990, but and I gave it to Caitlin, and it was just like the wrong range for her. It was written for a soprano, so that idea went out the window. And I guess that also is a bit of a connection to why Francelon Daniels, because the original text was for that other work, which is called Vaux, was taken from Automatic Writing by André Breton.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the first automatic writing examples of André Breton and Philippe Soupeau, so it was from like 1918.
So you've always been interested in surrealism. I know you're a big fan of Max Ernst's art, and you read surrealist poetry. What's your view on surrealism and its relationship to music?
Yeah, well, I mean, there kind of isn't that much that can be really easily called surrealist music. You probably know there's this interesting article by Anne LeBaron where she kind of makes a case for various kinds of things. Like maybe free improv is like the closest thing. It's a kind of weird paradox with music. It's kind of like too easy to be free, and it's also, from another angle, it's kind of too hard because it's hard to be free with a lot of people at the same time.
So do you think that the subject matter of the poems, this kind of state between wakefulness and sleep, do you think that provides an opportunity in some way for music to explore surrealist ideas or possibilities even?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're all the thing which I really, I guess, take from surrealism is the idea that it's a set of techniques that complement, kind of rationally trying to work out how things are going to fit together, and I just like the kind of approach to openness when you're kind of in that creative state. I don't know if you feel the same, but when you're writing music, I find that the best times are when it is just kind of flowing out rather than kind of being carefully thought through. And that's not to say that you can't kind of prepare for being in that position by carefully thinking through beforehand, but just those kind of natural connections which are made by someone who's really familiar with the materials. That's, I guess, one of the things that really interests me about.
And so I'm interested in this idea of the creative state, and how does that apply to electronics? Like when you're programming electronics for a piece, so Night Fragments has quite an extensive electronics part in it. Does a similar thing happen? Do you get in that same state?
Yeah,
and you follow it?
I really think you do. A lot of these kinds of patches, such as the ones that are used in Night Fragments, they have a lot of variables, and so I'm kind of like running things through them, and it's very hard, I think, in retrospect to remember exactly what was altered and changed. Like little tweaks are made to kind of drive it, drive the sound in a certain direction.
Yeah, and talking about driving things in a certain direction, I mean, how did you feel the process of working with Decibel affected the genesis of the work, or Caitlin? But, that kind of bringing work to the group and workshopping it, did that shape the work in any particular way than you did before that? Because 2011, Decibel had been going about 18 months or so, it would have been the second piece that you'd written for the group. So did you find any change in your own compositional practice as a result of working with the group?
Well, I guess the electronic part is very integral to this piece, like particularly near the end of the work, maybe the last 3 or 4 movements in particular. The electronic part is at least equally important to the instruments. There's the possibility of expressiveness of human beings playing instruments, and then there's also this kind of use of human beings as a source of sound, which is then kind of manipulated in real time, and that starts to happen actually more as the piece goes on. The piece actually gets kind of simpler as it goes along. I think the first movement, movement was written first, which is not always the case. And it's much more kind of mechanistic than perhaps all of the other ones. And in a way, this piece is a kind of, for me, is a kind of transition piece between works like that, which is maybe my old way of working, and the kind of pieces that I started to write more and more for Decibel, where the electronic part takes, I guess, more of a leading role.
But I'd argue that it's also the way you scored the works that started to change from this point. Well, not really. I mean, Antibody in 2009 also explored different scoring techniques, but this the use of click tracks and differing tempos is something that you've been fascinated with for a long time. Can you talk a little bit about how that fits in with the score? So in Night Fragments, you have, I think we just had a very basic page-turning mechanism in a way, but then people in different movements would go at different speeds. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the idea was that there would be a kind of overall coordination of the work by a computer. So, Index of Metals, I think, uses a conductor.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like basically replacing both the conductor and, in a way, the electronics, people manipulating the electronics and putting everything in the computer's basket. So the computer coordinates the musicians through click tracks, and it also turns their pages and so on, and it also cues the electronics to happen at certain particular points. And that kind of opened up the possibility of some things which I thought were quite interesting, like being able to grab very, very short samples, because you knew that at a particular point in time, as long as the musician was doing their job, they would be playing a certain thing, and you could grab it and then do things with it. And yeah, I think you can hear in the piece that becomes more prominent as the work goes on. And yeah, I had done, I'd made quite a lot of pieces with, variable tempos, or like people, different musicians playing at different speeds and so on, but I hadn't really made a kind of really, they were kind of all experiments. This was like more of actually a song, like it's actually like I guess a piece of expressive music, combining the idea of having people going at different tempi, but also at the same time, kind of everything kind of coordinating into a kind of a very strange accompaniment.
But a beautiful accompaniment.
Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.